they are often reduced to just being a body. And because these bodies have always been seen as something that could be easily discarded, there's no respect for their bodies and a complete dismissal of their brains.
You exist in a world where nobody sees you, but everybody sees you. And when they see you, your silhouette doesn't look like you, it's a monster.
When they see you as somebody to be feared, as much as we try to hold on to our humanity, you realize you live in a world where your humanity is constantly being challenged and constantly being questioned.
It hurts. It hurts. It hurts so bad. I can't. That's hard to talk about.
It's okay to envision something else. And what is that something else going to look like? I don't know. But this can't be all there is, because this doesn't work. This isn't working for anybody.
I can be something you believe, something you can't believe. Something you can't believe.
These young people don't need saviors, they need believers.
Something you can't believe. You can't
Well, good evening, everybody. Specifically, good evening, Black people. Yes, and happy Black History Month to everybody else. All right, let's jump in. So first, I want to just say that took my breath away. So thank you for that trailer. It was beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. So I want to shout out first, thanks to Nena and to Max in athletics and everybody who worked hard to get us here. But especially a shout out to Emma, who asked me about this 2 years ago. And I forgot about it and went on sabbatical and came back and saw your photo in the Cooper series and was like, oh, look at this, they're having a Black person come. And then I saw my name and I was like, oh, wait, I'm in there too. So I'm delighted to have you here and to say welcome to Swarthmore. We are so glad to have you. I also want to shout out the folks in the community and our audience here who are doing incredible work in Philadelphia, in addition to our brother Malcolm, who's here with us tonight. I want to shout out the Youth Art and Self-Empowerment Program who's here with us tonight. I want to shout out Grown that's here with us tonight, a reentry program. I want to shout out the Cecil B. Moore Community Center who's here with us tonight. They used to be called Connie Mack, if you're an old head. And I also want to especially shout out the Greater For Think Tank, who is our community. I love you guys. It is a community of scholars who are inside and outside folks, and by inside I mean incarcerated folks and outside folks who are scholars and educators, really trying to raise awareness around issues of incarceration and its impacts in all different kinds of ways. So I want to shout out everybody who's here. I especially want to do that because hopefully this evening will leave you moved to participate. And I want to shout these folks out so that when you're leaving, you can stop in the lobby and see who you can connect with, where you can contribute, and where you can get in, where you fit in. Fair enough? Yes, this is participatory. Yes. Yes, we're going to participate. So Malcolm has agreed to open the questions up to the audience at the half-hour mark, so we're not droning on and on together, and we're going to open it up to you guys and be a little bit more spontaneous. So we're going to invite questions from the audience, and you're going to shout them out, and then I'm going to repeat them, and then we're going to go from there. But we're going to talk for a little bit before then. Yes? Good. Okay, y'all got it. All right. So I would love to hear more about your foundation, the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation, and the Players Coalition, and the work you do with each, and what you're hoping to accomplish, and if there's a relationship between the two.
That's a big question. Okay.
Yeah.
I started the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation in 2010. I had just gotten to, it was my second year in NFL. I was in New Orleans with the Saints, and had been doing a lot with that organization, whether it be visiting schools or food drives, things that the Saints were doing. And I sat down with my mom and we wanted to have a more concentrated effort to really have an impact. Instead of doing these one-off kind of events that didn't really tell a narrative or a story, just kind of like those feel-good charitable things. It's like, how do we actually have a measurable impact on the community that we're trying to effectuate? And so we came up with the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation and started in New Orleans with a life skills program that we paired with an organization that was already doing kind of all of the academic supports that students needed. And so what we brought was they could take our course, and it taught them all about leadership, health and wellness, confidence building, all of these different things that make you a well-rounded individual that can function in society. Because I realized that for me, while I went to, graduated high school, finished 4 years in college, graduated college, the best lessons that I've learned have been through my experiences outside of kind of like my normal spaces. So being a kid from New Jersey who had to up and go out to Ohio that I'd never really been to and meet people out there and go to a campus that was really diverse, be under a coach that taught me more about life than football, being in a fraternity and kind of what that meant on campus. These things, then going to New Orleans, a city I before, probably in high school, if you tried to tell me to put New Orleans on a map, I probably couldn't tell you where it was. But to get down there and just see another culture with unique, things that made the community great, but things that also had some unique problems that they were dealing with. All of these different experiences, the people you meet, the things you learn, make you really who you are, sometimes more so than the academics. And so what our foundation tries to do is really plant those seeds for the youth to take them out of their own environments and put them into places that they wouldn't necessarily have access to, hoping that it sparks something inspiring in themselves, that they see themselves in them spaces. And so that over the few years has grown to being active in Louisiana, Ohio, New Jersey, where I'm from, and now Pennsylvania, doing anything from food drive giveaways to a STEM program that we have with Drexel University, and getting ready to do another one with Ohio State coming up soon. So it's been fun. My mom's the president of the foundation. We've done a lot of different things, operating in 4 different states. But one of the things that led to the coalition was this recognition that charities are great and they're needed because they provide immediate relief. But we take kids and bring them onto whatever campus and bring them to our programs, but we're still sending those kids back to the environments that made them at risk in the first place. And nothing I could do with my foundation was really going to change their environment or their experience. And so in the light of 2016, you had Alton Sterling, Philando Castile being shot, and that's kind of what sparked my advocacy work. And soon thereafter, you had Colin Kaepernick take a knee. And what that sparked was really just this awakening that guys started recognizing that, like, okay, I'm not the only one who cares about these issues. There's Colin, and you realize, like, there are guys almost on every team who are passionate about issues that are affecting Black communities, Black and brown communities, and want to figure out how to get involved in a way that's bigger than their own foundations. Because at that point, a lot of us, athletes and celebrities have their own foundations, they do their own work, but it's usually in silos. Rarely do we collaborate on any kind of endeavors. Rarely do we pool or share resources. And so it's an effort that we all want to know what's going on. We want to do something collectively. And that's kind of what started the Players Coalition. First thing we did was take a trip to DC. Anquan Bolden, who's also the co-founder, he's done lobbying before for some other issues. And so he was familiar kind of with the process, and he set up a trip to go down to Washington and meet with just some elected officials. And we were able to get meetings like in like 2 weeks, like very short notice. Like, hey, we can go in a couple weeks. Is everybody good? We took a trip, and what we realized that, all of these politicians and decision makers are football fans as well. And so what we had, what was unique to us was not that we were the experts or that we were, the faces of a movement or anything like that, but we had access to decision makers. And so what we wanted to do was, how do we get the messages from the grassroots organizers that are doing this work day in and day out? How do we get their voice to the table, these decision makers, and trying to align ourselves, with that movement, but also make those connections. And so we came back in the spring and just continued that. And over the last, we've been doing it now for 3 years. And we do two things. We focus mainly around criminal justice reform, police and community relations, economic advancement, and educational equity. And the way that we go about doing that is, one, through charity. So I think everybody's kind of know, or at least heard about what we've negotiated or been able to raise funds, not only through our own pockets and what we do, but we negotiated with the NFL to secure about $89 million to give directly to organizations that do the work all around the country. And so that's part of it, the charity part. And that's literally getting funds, using our resources, our platform to get people to support these organizations that do the work day in and day out, that don't get a lot of thank yous, that, really need the support. And then the second part of it is, how do we advocate and really push and lobby for changes in policy? And once we started really wrapping our brains around that, that's when I think the majority of our real impact started to come to fruition. We have, I think, changed at least 6 or 7 policies around the country. And so, for example, in Pennsylvania, the Clean Slate Act was a bill that needed to get pushed, needed some support. We were able to come and go to the State House and really push for that to get passed. And when it did pass, it affected millions of people. And that was just one way, that us just showing up, really, and being able to say, we support this, you need to do this, it's going to help, affects millions of people. That's far greater than what I can do with my own individual foundation. And the same thing all over the country. There was, in Boston, some of the Patriots guys caught wind that kids were being sent to juvenile detention centers at the age of 7 years old. That's what the law allowed. And of course, the kids that were going, that would get sent to juvie at that age were disproportionately people of color. And so what they did was lobby along with, and put pressure on their own team to get behind an op-ed and a letter, and they end up getting that age raised to age 12 from 7. And so everything from voter registration or restoration to, bail, all these different things, you have different athletes in different markets, because every market is different, has different challenges. But what we've been able to do is create a vehicle where they can get linked up with experts, learn what's going on in their specific city. They can figure out how they fit into the puzzle, whether it's an op-ed, whether it's showing up and having meetings, whether it's being active on social media. And then you have a support group of other athletes that you can link your voice with, knowing that we all have kind of this sphere of influence, and when we put it together, all of a sudden you create a trend, or you create some movement. And it's been interesting. It's been a lot bigger than I think we originally had imagined, but it's great work.
Okay. I think we got time for one more question.
I'm long-winded, yeah.
No, I'm teasing. So it seems to me you have a clear sense of what your job is, and you're very passionate about football. I assume you can only be good at it if you're passionate about it, and also what your work is. And to me, that sounds like it extends beyond your job as an athlete. And so I'm wondering a couple of things. One, how you stay focused on one, and how you sort of navigate between the two. How do you keep an eye on the long term of your life's work and your job? Then a second question is how you deal with I think one of the important things that we have to remember is that Black folks are not a monolith, and the people who believe in things and want to see change are not a monolith. There's a history of debate around how we define problems and the root cause of problems and the strategies we use to address them. And I know you're interested in mass incarceration as an issue, policing particularly. And so I'm thinking about how you see your strategy in relation to others and how you handled those disagreements. You know, how do we expand the conversation so that we don't get stuck on our disagreements, but we can see that we're all concerned about these things, and how do we work in concert? So how do you handle that? And then also, how do you navigate between your job and your work? Because I'm sure there are criticisms around your ability to do both.
So when it comes to like my job as an athlete, and then what I do in the community, I cringe every time somebody calls me an activist, because that's not what I set out to kind of be. I think at any point in time, when you become conscious as a Black person in this country, like activism has to come as a sense of survival. Like there's no way to know what's going on and not be involved. And so I can't turn off my Blackness, and so I can take off my helmet. And I think that's what ends up happening is like, when I have my helmet on, I'm at work and I'm doing what I do, that's my focus, that's my job. I love it, I'm passionate about it. But when I take my helmet off, I'm still a Black man. And I go home to a Black family. I go visit my family that's in these areas that have high crime rates, poor schools, that are really being marginalized systemically. And so to me, it makes no sense unless I just did not know what was going on. Once you know what's going on, it's really hard to ignore that. And so that's really how I prioritize the two, and why I have energy and the bandwidth to really attack two. But I think when it comes to like how you deal with disagreements or different ways to go about effectuating that change, I think it comes down to your ability to listen, but also the ability to recognize the strengths of other people, and knowing your role in, like the young lady said earlier, you got to know your role within this movement or organization. Some people are going to be in front of the camera. Some people, are behind the scenes. Some people are organizers. Some people, don't want to get involved too much. Some people, this is their life. But I think the first thing for me was to recognize, one, this is not a new fight. I'm not showing up and recreating the wheel. Who's doing the work? Who's being effective? How do I support them? Recognizing that as an athlete, I have a voice and a platform. But I also know that it's beneficial for me to have opposing views, or for people to attack it from different angles, because everything that we're trying to do is so large that my ideas and my voice alone is a BB on a tank. But knowing that there are different angles and leverage points that we need to push. I think the key example is really in the NFL, you had people like to break it up in this faction of like Colin Kaepernick or myself. And I think that both views and tactics are very, very necessary. I think there's always going to be this grassroots kind of in your face, rebellion that causes commotion. It causes a disruption of the status quo. That's where your protests, your marches, but those things in and of itself don't create the change, right? Just like there's some people who are behind the scenes, who are behind closed doors, who are with the policymakers, who are doing those things. Those alone, even those people by themselves don't create change. It's like you need the swell from the grassroots as well as those people who are behind closed doors to push those buttons as well, and it works in concert. And when you recognize that, it's easier to collectively, organize. And I think the hardest part and why the system is well designed as it is because it's really, really hard to organize. We're talking about it behind stage, how many different organizations you have that do great work, but they do great work in a silo, and resources are very, they're hard to come by. And so the ability to collectively have a voice, collectively have a goal, to collectively measure your wins and losses the same way, and to share resources has been the most effective model that I've seen. And so for me, I kind of embrace that like melting pot of ideas, and I think disagreements are healthy.
Mm-hmm. I think they're generative, and one of the things that that I think is really important here is that you're identifying different roles. So I'm glad to hear that that legislators are responsive to you, because I had a couple bills I want to talk to you about, number one. But I think we all do have a role to play, and part of it is how do we push the institutions that we have leverage in. So for us, we think about how we use education to raise awareness around these issues, but at the same time, how do we democratize knowledge production? How do we say, like, you don't have to have a PhD to be able to speak to these realities, these social systems, these experiences, so that we all participate in understanding what's happening here. And so what does that mean that we can push on our institutions from the inside, but also agitate from the outside? And what are the roles of all of us? And now that I know, again, that you have those numbers, I'm definitely gonna email you. So one of the last things I'll ask before we move on to the audience is, what are some of the challenges that you're running into in this work? What are we facing here, right? So we're in a moment where people are saying, actually the criminal legal system, and I reject the term justice because there's nothing just about it, but how does the criminal legal system, how is it overreached, right? So there are ways in which people across political divides have said there's an overreach, right? So if there's some agreement on the fact that there's an overreach, what are some of the challenges, both in the work you do to bring access to educational resources to young people? What are some of the challenges you're running up against in dealing with policing and prisons and the work you want to do around that?
I think the two largest things are, one would be recruiting, and that's not really for the here and now. That's like, how do we keep this going long after I'm done playing football and anybody cares what I have to say on the matter, right? Like, and so how do we continue to create a pipeline of athletes that, one, are in the know enough, but are bold enough and insulated enough to feel comfortable with stepping out on the stage and continue to be advocates. I think the other problem or challenge is really trying to educate the public on what's actually happening in a world where, you know, every 30 minutes there's new breaking news, and how to stay relevant in that. And so here we are, you know, 3 years past the protests, the national anthem protests, and we don't get near as many, you know, conversations about, you know, athletes and activism, what's going on in the communities, when in fact there are way more athletes doing work and getting results in this space. And so it's really about the controversy that sells. So how do you keep the attention of people, and really, and the amount of, you know, propaganda that we all kind of intake over our lifetimes, the conditioning that we have societally or from society is so ingrained that to be able to even get people to fathom some of the concepts that we talk about, or to even be able to show them that there is a problem, is one of the hardest things as well. And you have to, you know, be really patient with that, because everybody comes from their own lens of perspective and what their experiences were growing up. But I think the ability to educate people, especially people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, have never heard this thing. So I get tired a lot from preaching to the choir. Like, I'm like, give me the people who don't agree with me. Like, those are the people I want to have a conversation with. Not that they have to agree with me, but that's where, like, movement comes. But if we sit on social media and try to do those things where we push out an article or you get 140 characters to try to say what's on your mind, oftentimes that dialogue doesn't happen. And when it comes to the point where we have to make a decision or push for change, you don't have the support that you need, because people just don't know or don't understand. So that public education piece is big, which is one of the reasons that I'm getting into film and documentary, because I know it's really hard to, if I call into one of these sports radio shows, somebody's on their drive home from work, they just want to hear about the Eagles, they don't want to hear about the, mass incarceration and things like that. ESPN is not the vehicle for us to be talking about these things, or to carry it. And so we have to find different ways to create that dialogue so that it's digestible, people can understand the impact, and really bring, like, that empathy and understand that, like, a lot of times when we talk about these things, we throw out statistics and numbers and all these things, but these are real people real communities that have been damaged long before this. And as much as we try to move away from the history of our country and try to look forward to a better future, until we really address and acknowledge a lot of the systems that were put in place with malintent long before us, how they still benefit some of us, and we still support it and perpetuate these things. That's the part where I think we continue to drop the ball. We're in such a rush to move past and get to this post-racial America without really having reconciliation from what happened before. And I think until we can really educate ourselves and put it and own it, that this is part of our history, that all of the inequities that we see didn't just show up in 2020, that this has been from the beginning of the existence of this country, then we all start to feel like we're responsible for the change. And I think when we're all responsible and we all play our role, then we have an opportunity, I think, to really be revolutionary.
Beautiful. One of the things that I think, and I'm adding my last question. I know I said that was the last one. I'm going to add another one. Because I'm thinking about particularly the work we do in the Greater For think tank, and our mission is really education for liberation. And what we do is really think about how do we educate folks toward freedom. And in that way, we're trying to model the world we want to see. So instead of just thinking about liberation as a future thing, we try to be free with each other. And what does that look like to have our relationships be just and be ethical in all these different ways? And so when I think about the fact that I'm a professor and, in this very elite institution and all of these other things, when I think about my legacy, what I think about is people saying, when I was around her, I was loved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what it means to be free, to be loved, to be whole, to be seen and known and understood. When I saw that trailer, what I saw was the full depth and breadth of human emotion in bodies that we don't see as even capable of full humanity. So I was originally going to ask you a question about legacy, and I'm still going to, but in light of that film, it makes me think there's all these things you're doing, but that seems really meaningful to you. So what do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? I don't know yet.
Okay.
I think it's ever changing. I think, I want to be a good steward of the platform I've been given. I mean, long story short. But I think there's, the reason I get behind things like the film or some other initiatives is because I think that there needs to be, we have to change our minds about, who we all are as people. And when you look at how our laws get passed, a lot of the times, if I can scare you into supporting this issue, then you will. So if I can tell you that crime is rising and let you think that all of these murderers are on the street, when I want to put in some really, really hard crime bills or want to lock a bunch of people up and even though it's, and monetize it in these private prisons, all I got to do is scare you and make you think that it's in your neighborhood when it really, really that's not the case. And so how I break those things down is the film and, or I do things like, you brought up Graterford. I'd never been into a prison, and Graterford was the first prison I visited. And they sat me down, or they took me into a prison, literally go into the B block, and everybody's kind of just out and about, and they closed the door behind us, and immediately I'm like, where's our security?
Wait, they let you go into the block? You really got an all-access pass. I go there every week. I've never been to a block.
Yeah, we're in the block.
Okay.
Nobody was in their cells either, so it was, and so here I am, a big football player, nervous, but and it just kind of, it really changed my mind about everything. Then we went and they sat us down with 6 gentlemen they were juvenile lifers. All 6 of them had been incarcerated longer than I had been alive. And they left the room, and so it was just me, another teammate of mine, and these 6 gentlemen, and we just talked. And what I realized is that, I totally took everything that I saw on TV or heard and just immediately applied it to every single guy that was in there. When in fact I was really safe, and I was learning a lot from their experiences. And a lot of them really just wanted to be back out on the street to impact the people that look like them or the kids and youth that are in the situation that they're in now. And it just kind of dawned on to me, like, our capacity to change as humans is phenomenal. We have to recognize that we all are not, defined by our worst moments. And so what I did was, when we went to the Super Bowl, I was the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Eagles that year. And so they give you 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. You can bring anybody you want. Most people, will do an auction for their foundation or, give it to some youth or something like that. I brought one of the gentlemen that I met.
Connie, Kempis Songster. Oh yeah, that's my homie from way back.
I took Kempis Songster out to the Super Bowl because I knew everybody was going to ask me, okay, as a Walter Payton Man of the Year guy, who did you bring? And Kempis was, a juvenile lifer, committed murder at the age of 16, and had just gotten released. And he was one of the guys that I remember talking to specifically, and just his ideas on how, our communities need to be healed, and how he, kind of changed his mind and his way of thinking while he was incarcerated. And I'm like, these are the type of people that we need to be advocating for our youth. These are the people who are closest to the problem. That means that they're closest to the solutions. And so just being able to showcase him on a stage like the Super Bowl just really changes, how people perceive his humanity. And so when you see somebody like myself bringing him to a stage like the Super Bowl and, bringing him around and he's fine, and all of a sudden people are looking like, okay, like that dude, okay, he's a murderer, he was juvenile lifer, all right, maybe it's not, maybe he's changed. And I think just being able to break down those barriers, I think, are important for all of us, just to even be able to understand, where we come from and empathize with each other.
Yeah. And how do we think about not changing each other, but changing the conditions that produce these outcomes? And if we're really not committed to that, we're really not committed to seeing a more just, more equitable world that we claim to have or want. So on that note, okay. Before, I was like, wow, okay. I was going to say thank you. No, and why don't we open it up to our wonderful friends in the audience, and then I'll restate your question. Okay. It better be good. Okay.
Thank you for being out here, Mr. Jenkins. I really enjoyed your talk. I just had a 2-part question, which was, how does, if you think it does at all, your veganism impact the way you see the world and advocacy? If it makes any difference in the way you look at victimization of animals or others. And the second part, which is actually difficult for me as a white man, I don't really understand. You have some scarring on your arm that I don't really understand the meaning of, and I was curious what that means and how I should understand it.
Wow. Maybe we should have stuck to the questions we chose, but go ahead.
So my veganism doesn't have anything to do with my activism. That has nothing to do. I'm not like an animal lover or anything like that. I'm sorry if I disappoint anybody, but
it didn't disappoint me.
Yeah, it's strictly for my performance. I saw it as it's a lifestyle change, really, just for sports. The second part of your question was about my brand. I'm in a historically black fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. That's what that is.
Some folks in the audience are accused and clearly excited, but they don't want to say anything. You can, it's fine. I might jump to one of the questions here, if that's okay. What do you hope young athletes learn from you? What effect do you hope to have on the athletic community? What motivates you to do the work you do?
When it comes to other athletes, I hope what myself and what other athletes have done for me, really, like to be able to see, John Carlos and be able to meet John Carlos and Tommy Smith and talk with them about their experience, to be able to watch. I remember even in 2016, that same summer that Alton Sterling and Philando Castile was shot, is you had LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, and all of them stand up on the ESPYs and challenge other athletes to get involved, and we need to use our voices in our platforms. And I think the response to that is something that we've never seen. And so hopefully this next generation of athletes come up more knowledgeable about what's going on in front of them or around them, come up more emboldened to be able to use their platforms, not only just to speak out, but really to just walk into, these spaces and have equity, whether it's in your own sport or your own community. Just feeling like, hey, you deserve more than just to shut up and dribble or show up and play your sport. Like, nah, you help build that sport. You're an advocate for your community. You represent so many different people, and so many kids and people look up to you and aspire to be where you are. And so hopefully this next generation of athletes comes into it conscious, about that all of that exists, and take this to a level that we've never seen. I think because it took me probably till 3/4 into my career to really step into this space in the capacity that I have. But I'd love to see the next generation walk in fully knowing who they are and what they want to accomplish.
I wonder, too, we were talking about it beforehand, some of the criticism you might receive for the roles you play across communities. 100 years from now would be your, greatest plaque, as we see with Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, that when it was happening, he was demonized, but now he's everybody's favorite. He probably will get a stamp soon, especially now that he's...
That's all of the leaders, I feel like.
Yeah. Go ahead. Why don't we go here?
Yeah. Right. So the question was about, like, how do we decide where we fund, organizations, and do we fund? And the problem being, a lot of organizations are people who step into the space and try to insert themselves or try to help. They're very well intentioned, but there's also other organizations that are run by people who are directly affected. And I think is a combination of both. I think the main thing that we look at is who's being most effective. Because there are often times where you see a lot of grassroots, organizations that might be led by people who are directly, who've been involved, but they're just not, they're not being that effective. And so they might need support. And so I can let you respond back. And so I think it's a combination of them. Who's having the number one impact, right? Real impact too. And we'll support them, but then it's also some people might need to help with infrastructure, to hire more people, or to be more impactful. We also help build those things. And then the largest thing of what we try to do is like create or force a collective impact. So if we have an organization that might be underfunded, but we think they have potential to have real impact, and there's another organization that has a huge budget, and they might not be as impactful, but they're one of those big organizations, we'll force them to work together and say, okay, we have this money that both of y'all are going to split and do this program. And then in that way, you're sharing, resources, but also you're forcing kind of this collaboration that involves everybody, because neither one of those organizations are going to do it alone. And so sometimes you need kind of a mix of both. But I understand that there's this notion that, and we have to be careful of it too as athletes, that we step in, and because we get all the attention, what we try to do as much as we can is like step out of the way and bring somebody else with us who directly is impacted or who's been through it and is now doing the work. Because I think their voices really oftentimes have the best solutions and best ideas, but are the least heard. Understood.
So first of all, I've had the privilege of meeting your mother, and she's very, very nice. My question, you said at one point
Well, it's really hard because if they don't want to hear me, they're not going to show up to events like this. So then I'm not going to knock on anybody's door. But I think the largest thing that I try to convey is that I am listening and I'm open to it, you know. And so when people, and this is why, you know, I asked her to open it up to the crowd, because I don't like just getting up here and, you know, giving a lecture about what I think. I think dialogue is where, one, I get to learn a different perspective, and different perspectives will either change my mind or they'll solidify, you know, where I stand. And so I really try to create environments that are safe for people to disagree. I think that's the first thing, because right now we don't even have a marketplace for that. Social media is not the place. Rarely do we convene and just share ideas. So creating a space where open dialogue is welcomed and safe, I think is the first step.
Right. I still want to ask you, I'm going to tell a secret, which is that backstage you asked me about abolition.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't get a chance to ask you about abolition. And full disclosure, Brother Malcolm asked me if I was a prison abolitionist, and I said, yes, I am, and said more about that. And so part of what I'm challenged by in our current criminal legal system is that it's set up to be adversarial. There is no prevention of harm. There is no healing of harm. There is no way to address the root causes of harm. And so our current system is set up to punish and not to do any of the other things that actually address harm. What's your sense of whether or not abolition could, you know, what's your sense of prison abolition?
Yeah, so I wouldn't consider myself an abolitionist just because, and this is why I asked you, because I don't necessarily know exactly what that entails. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with you that right now, the way our prisons are set up, the majority of people who go to prison are going to come back out. It's not like everybody is sentenced to life. Yeah. And we're sending them away and never have to worry about them. They'll come back out.
95% of people who are sentenced to prison are coming back home. Right. 90% in Pennsylvania because we're draconian. But right. Thank you for that, Karen.
But so what that means is, like, you know, if the facilities that are going to don't foster healing, they don't foster rehabilitation, they damage you even more mentally and do not set you up to come back and integrate into society in a proper way, you're more likely to recidivate and end up right back in there, costing everybody money, costing our communities, you know, fathers, leaders, innovators, all these different things. So the human cost of what we're doing right now with our prison system, it doesn't even make sense, whether you want to talk about the dollars or the human cost that is associated with it. So I do think there needs to be a change in the way that we go about incarceration to be more restorative, to be, you know, to give people who have like mental issues and things like that. That's not the way. The incarceration is not the way to go about it. Punishing people is not the way to go about it. But right now we punish you behind bars, and then you come back and we continue to punish you by, you know, with all of the reentry issues that you face, whether it's probation, parole, or just the ability to discriminate against somebody who's had a criminal record. Like, so the action that they go to court for and you get a sentence, you pay your debt to society, and you continue to pay your debt to society until you most likely reoffend, and then we say, aha, we knew you were a criminal. Like, it doesn't make sense. So I think I wouldn't say I'm an abolitionist, but I think what we're doing doesn't work, and I'm open to hear, you know, new ways of thinking about it.
We got you. Yeah, we got you. You're 95% there.
I'm close.
Yeah, we'll keep talking. Okay, let's have one last question. Oh, I meant this person. Yes, go ahead. Who gets to determine that?
So I think you raise a really good point. I think a lot of the times, and when we talk about reform, and I know I don't do it enough, is I don't talk enough about victims of crime, right? Or involve them in the conversation. But oftentimes when you do involve them in a conversation and you create healing for both sides, because both have now been through some kind of trauma, right? Oftentimes, it's not about punish this person as much as they can, because that's not justice either, right? Now, we can talk about the extremes of this, like murders and all those things, but the majority of people who are in prison aren't there for murders. And we're talking about people who are just being victimized by the system. And so let's put the extremes of the conversation kind of to the side and just talk about the majority of people that get caught up in prisons or in jail that commit crime. And then you want to look at, okay, well, what are the root causes of crime? Unless we believe that people are just innately bad people. If we believe that, then there's no hope. There's nothing we could change. Let's just lock them away. But if we don't believe that people are innately bad people, and if you look at statistics, the large amount of people who are in prison and jails are black and brown people. So we'd have to believe that if what we're doing is the right way, then black and brown people are innately more dangerous, more violent, more likely to commit crime. And what we're doing is in response to black people's inability to follow the law. I don't believe that that's the case. And so you start to look at what things contribute to crime. You look at poverty, and you look at what contributes to poverty, and all of a sudden you start to see all of the different things in our systems that contribute to that, whether it's our school systems, the lack of resources that go into these black and brown communities, the practices of redlining, the effects of the war on drugs, all the way back.
Yes.
And it's really hard to get to now and say, well, like, I think, people who, just say a blanket statement, I think people who commit crime should automatically go to jail no matter what. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, and I think it's up to us to really peel back those layers and understand what the root causes of the symptoms that we're trying to change. And incarceration historically has not been the answer.
Beautiful answer. I should also say that when I talked about our current system doesn't allow for healing, I was actually talking about people who have been harmed. And I think part of the straw man argument is often that our criminal legal system is so kind to people who have caused harm and not kind to people who have been harmed, and that the way to be kind to people who have been harmed is to have very punitive, long sentences. And as a person who has gone to commutation hearings of people who have lost family members to violence, and as a person who's lost family members to violence, long prison sentences for people who have harmed them does not create healing. And so part of it is our criminal justice system, our criminal legal system really, is not responsive at all to people who have been harmed. Doesn't take at all into account the harm that's been caused them, or try to create healing, community healing, individual level healing. We just aren't equipped to do that in the current paradigm. So how do we think about both not just healing harm, but preventing harm, which is a very different question that our criminal legal system as it currently stands can't answer. Joy, you have the last question.
Well, the question was, how do I sustain the practice of patience in doing this tough work that is, considered activism? I think you get frustrated when you begin to look at the work that you put in. You're like, putting in all these hours, I'm doing all these different things, talking to all these people, doing all this work, and it's not moving as fast as I want it to be. It can take one person to say something stupid to make you just really get frustrated and feel like all of this is for naught. Like, if this is the opposition and this is what I'm going with, then this, you can't. But I think when you start to look at the people that you're actually effectuating change for, and you really start to think about Like when I always kind of just remind myself it's bigger than me. So like I've been somebody who's been under a ton of scrutiny, criticism from people who are, I would say, is on my side and people who are opposed. And the way I just continue to have patience in it is to remember it's bigger than me. I stepped into this not to get a pat on the back and say, hey, you accomplished this, you changed this. I got into it to help other people. And so as much as I can do that, I'm going to try to do that. And so that helps me a lot more patient when it comes to dealing with conversations with people who don't necessarily agree, or when you move two steps forward and then you got to go another step back, or you just get stonewalled and people are not trying to hear what you're trying to say. For me, it's just about, okay, well, how do I adapt to the situation, right? Like, we started out, it was really about the protests and, okay, cool. It's like we did that now what? Like, because we got to continue to move. It's not just, a flash in the pan. It's not one person leading it. It's not a dictatorship. It's not a cult. It's a movement. So it's multiple parts and multiple layers. And when you're going against something that's as broad and as complicated as our criminal justice system, you need a plan and a group of people that are just as diverse and complex to be able to, attack that. And so for me, I try to stay encouraged by focusing on the people that we have impacted, the things that we have accomplished, and the things that we want to do. But yeah, there's no way around it. I haven't met anybody in this space that's not frustrated. No, and I'm not one of those people who are doing this day in and day out. I still play football for a living. When I go into the community and I align myself kind of with these community groups, like just me showing up and just validating, hey, y'all are doing a good job, like does a lot because it's frustrating work. It really is.
So part of what I think about too is being motivated by love and not being committed necessarily to a set of outcomes, but us being committed to each other. And that means that if we win or lose today, we still have each other. That we're committed to being in community. No, yours is so good.
I like her answer better. That's what I meant.
I loved your answer. You're so much more patient because I'm like, well, first of all, right? But you were just like, no, well, let's think. I loved the way you sat back a little bit. I'm going to take that from you. But I wanted to say, one, I think it's really important for us to think about love, particularly around this time of year in Black History Month. So I want to say, I know you get a lot of criticism and all kinds of things, but thank you for being committed to us. Thank you for that. Yeah. And we see you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We see you, we know you, we understand you, we're with you. Thank you for this film. Thank you for coming to be with us. And we're glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep going. All right.
I want to ask us to please give a huge thank you to both of you for the energy and the work you're putting in.
Definitely for you. They see me every day.
And as to encourage you guys to stay patient, we have some little gifties, which are just like an extra thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you, Emma.
You too. And not just like you, but I love you. I hope that all of you have taken something away from today that we can apply to our interactions with one another on this campus, with the communities of Swarthmore as a village, with Chester, with Philadelphia, with the people who are here from Grateford Think Tank, with the people who are here from YASP and CCIP. We have information and materials if you want to learn how to plug in. So just find me or find people who are wearing the t-shirt basically, and they can direct you towards me. And always feel free to email Professor Nina Johnson, who is always doing pivotal work on this campus. Thank you, Malcolm, for joining us today. And take care of yourselves. Yay!